The Enlightened Work Podcast is brought to you by Culture QI, the Culture and Talent Activation Company. With music by Geek Chorus. This episode is produced and edited by Alex Olson. For more content and engagement, follow the Enlightened Work Podcast on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Welcome back, Enlightened Leaders. Meena and I are so happy to see each other and you again to talk about a growth mindset as a top 10 enlightened leadership behavior on our ELB power list. In our last two episodes, we dug into EQ, or emotional intelligence. And as we have talked about for a long time, pretty much all goodness as an enlightened leader stems from high EQ. And this is particularly true with respect to today's ELB, continuous cultivation of growth mindsets. Like many of our other enlightened leadership behaviors, this one also became a bit of a buzzword, if you will, in its day when it first came out about 10 years ago. And we have chosen, I promise, our 10 ELBs not because they were trendy, but because once you cut out all the noise and the odd buildup of myths, they are in fact key ingredients for impactful leaders. Growth mindset became so widespread that apparently some marketers even tried to say their companies had a growth mindset, which of course we know is not actually possible because only humans with minds can have mindsets. Hey, Meena, do you want to start us out today by explaining what growth mindset actually is?
Yes, thank you. Good to see you. So we need to start with Dr. Carol Dweck. She's a psychology professor at Stanford and received her doctorate at Yale. She's brilliant, an accomplished person. When she was a child, she became curious about mindset and how what is told to us as children ends up shaping how we think about our abilities. That sounds obvious, but rather than relying on anecdotal evidence, she made a serious neuropsychological study of it. Dr. Dweck defines people who have a growth mindset as individuals who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others. Her studies and other studies have supported the idea that with a growth mindset, people with a growth mindset tend to achieve more than their counterparts with a fixed mindset, or those people who believe their talents are innate gifts. This is because individuals with a growth mindset worry less about looking smart or right, and they put more energy into actual learning. Dweck's research has demonstrated that it's not IQ, a high or low IQ, that might make somebody succeed or hold somebody back from achieving. Rather, it's a way of thinking about themselves and their abilities.
This is such a juicy topic to dig into, Meena, for leaders. But of course, since continuous learning is one of my life values, you would expect me to say that, right?
You definitely have a growth mindset, Heather. I love it.
Well, and you do too. Anyways, this calls back a little bit to our conversations about self-awareness. The questions I would pose to leaders as we frame this dialogue today are you open to challenging your perceptions? Are you open to changing your mind? Or at least changing the way you think about something? And ultimately, are you open to changing yourself? If the answer is no, then you likely have a fixed mindset that is hurting your ability to be as strong and effective of a leader as you can be. But even if you think the answer is yes, how many of you actually show up at work demonstrating a growth mindset to your team?
I think that's a great point, Heather. I've seen it. Executives, bosses, kind of the unskilled manager, who are so fixed in their mindset and completely unwilling to be challenged or to grow. I think we probably see the unwilling to be challenged a lot more than the obvious unwillingness for growth. Yeah. And it's so detrimental to the productivity of the team and their business.
Well, and I've seen it plenty too. And Here's a foundational principle, I think, to understand and to set for today. Growth mindset is focused on the process, not the goal or outcome, which is a bit in conflict with what you're trying to do in business, right? So in corporate America, this can feel misaligned to your shareholder value or delivering upon the current quarter's results. But to be an enlightened leader of other humans, you have to balance how you relate to and motivate your team to reach their highest potential. And growth mindset really helps you deal effectively with the challenges and the failures that you will inevitably face at work. If you can't frame the mistakes and the setbacks as learning opportunities, you will find yourself, your team members, and your business stuck.
This reminds me of a study I read about by the Neuro Leadership Institute. The study indicated it's really important for leaders who are trying to demonstrate and instill a growth mindset with their workforce to understand the neurological science behind it. Because once you understand the neuroscience, you may realize that what you thought you had as a growth mindset maybe isn't. So just getting that science that's not complex or not too hard to digest really helps.
Oh, Meena, can I talk about the science, please? I love this part. So our brains have the ability to rewire and form new connections, literally changing our brain structure and architecture. This is called neuroplasticity. And when we focus with a growth mindset on reframing mistakes to foster learning, it reduces stress, it activates our dopamine reward system for motivation, it engages our prefrontal cortex for higher order thinking like goal setting and impulse control, and it builds long-term brain resilience by strengthening positive neural pathways and reducing the threat pathways. Now, having a fixed mindset, on the other hand, focuses your brain on your limitations, which then leads to more stress and disengagement as you literally get stuck in a threat response. It keeps you in a state of fear and self-doubt, which is not going to assist you leading people or your business effectively. So people have a natural fear of change, though. So that's the other challenge that our brain is under. So your brain likes to scan the environment for threats and then lock into whatever is safe and predictable. However, when you get stuck and fixed, you get more easily triggered and your brain gets slower and more rigid and you stop adapting and being flexible. All very bad leader behaviors, especially in times of change and transformation. So growth mindset does exactly the opposite in our brains and body by reducing stress and increasing cognitive engagement, which facilitates additional neurogrowth and learning. Meena, I just love the science part of it. Our brain is so amazing.
I agree. And what you're saying is, it's so fascinating. And our brain, body, and behavior connection is quite remarkable. There are people who falsely believe that a growth mindset is something you either have or you don't. That's not the reality. In fact, people are not confined to one mindset or another. Somebody could have a fixed mindset about their cooking abilities, but a growth mindset about their public speaking skills. And many other arenas do correlate with one another, but each lives on its own spectrum. So while it's possible to spot your own fixed mindset thinking and reframe it into growth orientation, you can't expect to change a chronic habitual mindset overnight.
Right. So here's an example of this, maybe. So my 18-year-old has what I think is a fixed mindset about his ability to do math. And he's had it since elementary school. And despite all of our efforts, Meena, to try to get him to change his attitude about it and give him the support that he needs so he can at least get a B, he is just insistent that he is not good at math. However, when he decided in 9th grade that he wanted to play men's volleyball, he did everything possible to learn and master the sport. It took him 4 years, and now he's going to college on a volleyball scholarship. So explain that mindset.
No kidding. I mean, it's a great example. The contrast between the mental block, I guess, about math versus the motivating and excitement and fun thinking about volleyball. I can relate. I feel like this is a great place for us to just talk about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour assertion in his book Outliers. So Malcolm Gladwell is a prolific writer, and of course he's come out recently with his tour that's debunking his tipping point. So all sorts of interesting things going on with him. But this again was one of those buzzwords that became completely ubiquitous, and everybody was talking about it. And yet, again, when the people with the PhDs and the neuroscientists actually looked at it, the 10,000 hour assertion is actually completely wrong. It's inaccurate. It was catchy and provocative, but not accurate. So I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole here that is, in fact, 100% related to growth mindset. So in the context of this 10,000 hours, how to get better at something, neuroscience and social science research shows that really the best way to get better at something is through something called deliberate practice. So not just like randomly practicing on your own, starting from novice to becoming expert, but rather practicing in order to get better, practicing with an expert, doing activities recommended by experts to develop specific abilities. Things like identifying weaknesses and working to correct them, and intentionally pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. This is exactly what my growth mindset is. So to kind of belabor this, several studies have indicated that there are 3 specific ingredients for mastering a skill. So the first thing is recognizing that our emotions play a critical role in learning. The old saw of keep your emotions out of it is actually, again, totally wrong. Keep your emotions in it. That's what's good. That's one piece of what's going to help you learn. The second piece is mental practice is key. I think your son must have pictured himself spiking the ball, pictured that call or that email from the coach recruiting him to go to school and get a scholarship for volleyball. He pictured all those really amazing things. And then the third piece is you've got to be motivated by purpose and long-term value. So practice, whether it's math or volleyball or tennis, takes on meaning and relevance when the goal is connected to purpose and long-term values. I don't believe for a second that as a leader, you can turn on a switch and suddenly have a growth mindset. It takes time. But I do believe that you can understand why it is important to foster this in your team.
I love that connection, and I think it really helps me frame what's happened with my son a little bit better. So how do we, Meena, make growth mindset tactical for our listeners, for the leaders out there? How can leaders exhibit this in their day-to-day and really facilitate it for their teams?
Well, I think the first thing is for leaders to recognize that honing this growth mindset is going to be beneficial for their personal lives and enrich their personal relationships and life, as well as their professional. So this isn't just like you've got to learn how to use Excel and you're going to use it every day at work. This is really something that's holistic for you as a person. And it's also about the development of your team. So it starts with your approach to problem solving. In one of Dr. Dweck's studies, her team analyzed students' brain activity while reviewing mistakes they made on a test. The students with a fixed mindset showed 0 brain activity when reviewing their mistakes, versus the brains of the students with a growth mindset showed processing activity as the mistakes were being reviewed. So fascinating.
That's so interesting, Meena. So a fixed mindset can physically prevent you from learning from mistakes, while a growth mindset can empower you to perceive mistakes as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. So I don't want to call this a rub, but this I do want to point out that for a leader, then thinking about and cultivating growth mindset requires a long-term investment and an eye towards the future, because you're making a commitment to your team's development. Reshaping how your team members think about their skills, abilities, and their potential requires time and effort from you. Everybody knows, right? All leaders know that it's much easier to assign the people who are naturally good at particular tasks to do those things, rather than for you as the leader to nurture and encourage the skills that don't necessarily come easily to them.
Yeah, so even if it's hard, which it is, it's certainly worth it. Because if we define a growth mindset as both the belief that skills and abilities can be improved, then as a leader or manager, developing your team is the purpose of your work. You really want to think intentionally about creating a culture that fosters a growth mindset. And that's a culture in which all employees are seen as possessing potential and are encouraged to develop and are acknowledged and rewarded for improvement. You're not only just managing for the near term, but you're also leading and laying a path for the future and building a continuous improvement mindset into the very fiber of your organization.
Exactly. And as a leader, you can start by doing these 3 things. Ask questions about your own skill set. Again, EQ, self-awareness, and find out where you need to evolve. Apply that learning and try again and keep improving. 2, for your team, create an environment where others can learn and grow. This looks like investing in their skill development and being engaged in how they are applying that to their work. And then the 3rd thing is intentionally praise your team members for their efforts as well as the outcome. And I can't stress efforts as well as outcome enough, because that really is one of the key cornerstones of the growth mindset or cultivating.
I have to share an example here, Meena. At my former company, we had a couple of years where we focused intentionally on embedding continuous learning into the organizational culture. And during that time, one of the key behaviors we pushed was to learn once and share. And that value, paired with behavioral tactics like rewarding people for their knowledge sharing, really helped 3,000 people to start adopting a growth mindset and continuous learning behaviors. It fundamentally changed how people approach their work and mistakes, how they sought out new information, and how, I think most importantly, shared with others in order to level up the entire team's performance.
And that kind of is a perfect layup for this interesting research note in Dr. Dweck's studies that showed that children who had been praised as clever or smart were actually later fearful of performing new tasks, worrying that they wouldn't perform, versus the children who were praised for their efforts tended to outperform. So this concept might have been taken to an extreme in everyone gets a medal. But on the other hand, Dweck found that the students who were praised for their efforts and participation in the learning process performed better. So maybe there is something to heaping praise for the effort. So back to our list of what leaders can do to facilitate a growth mindset. So the fourth item on this list is intentionally cultivate curiosity in the workplace and with your team. So a couple examples of what this specifically looks like. Invest in professional development like Lunch and Learns, a book club, or 1 hour a week for individual learning on a topic that your individual employees are curious about. Another option is in your one-on-one meetings, you can frame questions that foster intellectual curiosity. With the right tone of voice, you might ask your team member to explain their thinking to you. This enables that team member to articulate their problem-solving skills and may also end up teaching you something new. So all these actions demonstrate and help instill a growth mindset.
That's a great list, Meena. And I think that wraps up our growth mindset ELB. We did our best to learn once and share with you listeners, and you can give yourself a pat on the back for growing, behavior of growth mindset just by tuning in. You are well on your way to that growth mindset. Now just maybe go share it with someone else who needs it.
Yes, learn once and share. Thank you for learning with us, being part of this process, and for joining the Enlightened Work Uprising. Until next time, be the good.